Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Before we start this, I just want to say I have quite a serious medical issue right now, so if this video isn't up to scratch, then, well, basically blame it on that. When it comes to War Thunder, one of the arguments, or, well, not really argument, but one of the things that's always talked about, and it's not just a thing that War Thunder has issues with. It seems like every game has issues with this, whether it be Dota or StarCraft, some of the largest games that have ever been around. There are always threads on forums, on Reddit, on things like this, which basically talk about how the game is dying, basically because it's not being able to keep its user base there, and, well, it's also not being able to bring in the numbers. So, I've thought about this for a long time, because I've heard a lot of people parrot this. I've heard a lot of popular YouTubers talk about this, or they've talked about issues with the game and why players like them will never enjoy it, or they've talked about how the game is dying, so why is even the point in carrying on, because this game will not last. And I've never understood where these ideas have come from. Even on the forum posts or the Reddit posts, they always talk about how the game is, the amount of players is going down from this time compared to last time. So I thought, you know what, I'll have a look myself. I'll have a look into it. So I know this isn't a completely representative thing, but to be quite honest, it's impossible to get the actual official numbers for War Thunder unless you log into the game every day, all the time, and basically record what it says the online figure is, which could still be false. It could still be made up. We don't know. I mean, it's an interesting thing right now. According to the button at the top left of War Thunder, there are 45,000 people online, 45,283, which is a solid number for a Friday night in EU. But what I want to look at is the SteamCharts. Basically, SteamCharts is an app that you can access on Google. There will be a link for War Thunder in the description for the SteamCharts, but basically it shows the amount of times, the amount of people who have logged into War Thunder every day. And it takes an average per month. It shows you the gain and the percentage gain. It also shows you the peak players of, the last 30 days and every month before that. And I think it's generally a really good system, because it gives you an overview of how a game's doing. A lot of big YouTubers, Total Biscuit basically uses it as a metric to show to developers, look, if I make, basically take us seriously, because if I make a review, or a what the fuck is, of your game, and, I think it's quite good, then you can literally see where the sales come from. So it's a big selling point for a lot of these big YouTubers who play a lot of different games to basically say to the developer, look, give us a free copy and we'll give you free publicity. It's as simple as that. And it also means that, you don't have to be biased in any single way. So it's a metric used by a lot of people to show how their influence can, basically boost sales of a game. So in War Thunder's case, it's a free-to-play game, it's on Steam, and the all-time peak of War Thunder on Steam was 35,236, which happened in the 26th of October 2015. So, a few months ago. It's kind of as simple as that. I believe it was around the time where War Thunder for the first time had over 100,000 players online, which was quite interesting from a game which was supposed to be dying. Now, if you look at the link in the description for the SteamCharts, I just want you to click on it, and then hopefully it all should be selected, so it shows the full lifespan of War Thunder. If it doesn't show War Thunder, just type it in the Search Games button in the top right, and you can have a look for yourself at the graph that I'm looking at right now. And there are definitely things which stand out to me. The main thing is that, first of all, the game is quite old now. Nearly 3 years old, which the fact that it has this amount of players on, 44,000 or 45,000, is actually quite remarkable for a game like this. Second of all, obviously the Steam numbers are only about a quarter or even a fifth of the amount of people online, but we are basically extrapolating the number and basically saying, look, this is if we take this number, you can basically times it by 3. When it comes to the most popular day, the 35,000, that was still only about a third of the actual players which were actually playing. I used to play War Thunder through a launcher, and it came out on the launcher before it came out on Steam, I believe. But that's where I played it, and I'm pretty sure most people do. The fact that you have to open up the launcher from Steam, it seems kind of pointless to have War Thunder on Steam unless you want to do the packs, which you can also do on War Thunder's website. So basically, the whole reason for that spiel is to show that this does not represent every single damn person who plays War Thunder. This represents basically a statistic that we can extrapolate to all players and see general trends and see if the game is in fact dying. So, what we see over the last 2 years is a slight increase in the amount of players who play on average. What is also slightly increasing is the average peak number of players, which actually is affected quite a lot by certain things that we'll get into. So generally, over, let's see, in August 2013, there was 4,000 players. That was basically, I believe, when it was released on Steam. September 2013, 7,500 players. That is the initial growth that you are going to get from a new game when new people are trying it. In October 2013, it goes down quite significantly because some people enjoy it, but the hype for the game, I suppose, of the popular new release goes down, and lots of people try it and they realize they don't like it. But it is still larger than the number in August 2013. And then we see a steady growth until we get to January 2016, where we're at 11,192. Now there are definite blips in this graph. There are quite a lot of blips. And I think a lot of people are probably getting the idea where those blips come from. And it's not the peak players, it's not the average amount of players, it's not the gain or anything like that, but you can literally just see from the graph itself, you can see peak points. They're generally around 25,000 players. Earlier on, in 2014, it's around 22,000 players. May 2014, 26,000 players. September, 24,000 players. February, 29,000 players. October, 35,000 players, 2015. What you can actually map these to are updates. Major updates. So, the one that I have open, I'm going back to update 1.39 right now. So we have April 15th, 2014. That was a hell of a long time ago, thinking about it. But that was when the Shroud music was available. I really do remember that. I remember making videos on it. Or at least the thought of it. Basically saying how useless it was, and guess what? Well, it's useless. So, April 2014, if we go all the way back to this chart. April 28th, which is about a week after the update, it's a peak point. And what did this edition add? New aircraft and missions. It added a bunch of new planes. It added AI improvements. It changed a lot of how the economics worked. It's changed a hell of a lot of the sounds and the graphics. And basically, it changed a shit ton of stuff, just like most of the updates do. So you had a peak point when that update came out. Update 1.41, the next major update after it, June the 3rd, 2014. So June the 3rd, May, and June. So June, it actually decreased a lot. And you know why that is? You know why every game in June and July decrease? It's because people go on holiday, especially free-to-play games. When it comes to games which you actually have to pay for, a lot of people actually buy them at the start of March and April, which is why you see a lot of people actually releasing their games in March and April. There are 2 times when developers kind of release their games. It's kind of like movies, where you have the winter blockbuster, then you have the kind of like the summer blockbuster. But for games in the winter, you have a hell of a lot of games around that October-November time, leading up to Christmas. And then in the summer, you have a lot of games around that April-May time, which lead people into June and July. And the thing is, if people are paying for these games to play all summer, then they're not going to be playing those free-to-play games that they can play whenever they want. So during the lifespan of this game, you can see significant drops in the summer when people are playing it. And basically the reason for that is people are on holiday. You know, they're not playing every day, because when I was at school, which I'm guessing it would be nice to do an average age of, you know, player in War Thunder, but because it's such a low age rating game, I think probably a lot of people are in school, or they're at university, they're at college. Maybe they obviously, if they're not there, they have jobs. So you're going to have time in the evenings. So that's when you get into the daily routine, right? You go to work, you come home, you have dinner, maybe you clean a bit, then you play for like 2 hours. In the summer, when you have time off, you want to do something different. You maybe want to play a different game. Maybe you want to go on holiday. Maybe maybe you do something like that. So you get out of the daily routine, which is why most of the time in the summer, you don't see a lot of tournaments for games. You don't see a lot of... you don't really see a lot of anything for games when it comes to the June and July area. But then, when it ramps up in September and October, which is where you see massive peaks for War Thunder, it's when people have come back to school or come back to work and they get back into that spree again. And because they've been away from the game, they're like, oh shit, there's new stuff. Let's have a look at this. Let's see what it looks like, which is why every time September and October rolls around, you have a massive peak. And the thing is, it's amazing looking at stuff like this, because you can actually map out how people kind of think when it comes to games and stuff, because a lot of games have very similar graphs. If you type in any popular game, you will see a very similar graph, apart from the only real difference is that the amount it will deviate and also increase. But you can, as I said, you can see in September, October, in the 3 years this has been around for September, October, there are massive spikes. But every time the spike is bigger, because you have more players playing the game. But remember, the game is dying. There is less players than ever before, and all this shit. Because people look at the maximum amount of players at any time and they go, well, it should be like that all of the time. But anyway, we'll get on to the next major update that came around for War Thunder. Update 1.43, October 9th, 2014. October 9th, 2014, the closest one I can get to right now is September 29th, 2014. But if you look at September 29th, 2014, if you have it scrolled out to all, then you'll see that there is a general increase over this time period, and that is basically to do with what I was talking about before. From August to September, you're always going to have these massive spikes in games, so probably the update has nothing to do with that one, to be quite honest. It might do, because guess what this had in it? It had air race mode, how brilliant. And it had Mozdok. Well, this wasn't really a massive major update. It didn't really have a lot in it. It had some new maps and stuff like that. And it had some new ground vehicles, which generally doesn't really do anything, especially when the ground vehicles out are German and Russian. So we'll get on to the next one. Update 1.45. 16th of December, 2014. In here is probably one of the biggest updates that has ever happened to this game. I believe this was around the time when we had the peak number of players, maybe just before this actually, and the reason for it is because of the introduction of American tanks. Now, one thing you can say about this game is that it is heavily dominated by the European player base. If you try and find a game on the US server, you're going to have a much harder time than if you try the European server. But the thing is, you just kind of have to live with that. I'm sorry, but that's kind of just how it is. It's a game which appeals more to Europeans than Americans. But when the American tanks came out, it introduced a lot of American players to the game. Or at least a lot of new American players. And guess what? The amount of people playing the game went up. It's weird how that works. When you add content which appeals to a certain demographic which were not catered to before, more people start playing the game. They start playing different variants of it. But there was a massive increase because of this. Because, well, it's the first time anybody saw American tanks, or at least got to play them, because they were such a big deal. The next major update, there was actually a massive time between this one, December 2014 and June 29th, 2015, so that was like 6 months, was Cold Steel. Cold Steel, a bunch of random crap was added, and also it was the Enduring Confrontation thing. There was also a bunch of interface changes, a lot of sounds were changed and everything like that, but to be quite honest, for a update which was, 6 months in the making, there wasn't, compared to the massive things of before, there wasn't really a lot of stuff, which is kind of harsh to say, because there's still a lot of stuff, but compared to before, there isn't as much stuff. It also came out in June. So what you want to do in June is you want to have a patch or an update which fixes a shit ton of stuff in the game. So when the players come back from their holiday, when they come back from playing their older games, or sorry, not older games, other games that they've purchased in the sales, like the spring sales or whatever, you want them to come back to the game and you want them to see a ton of things fixed, so they forget about the problems of the game that were there before, and then they basically start enjoying the game again. They have a reinvigoration, and that's basically what this update was. There was a bunch of stuff thrown into the game, none of it really new. The T10M, the SU100Y, the Leopard 1, the M60 were basically, and I suppose the Firebrand as well. They were thrown into the game. Everything else was just a variation of something that was already in the game. So it was basically just the same model aircraft, maybe with different bomb loads, maybe with a slightly different propeller or something like that. But the one thing they did in this update is fix a shit ton of stuff. And for the player who plays every day, kind of like a player like me, I play, maybe 5 out of the 7 days a week, War Thunder, even if it's just 1 or 2 games. It doesn't look like a very impressive patch, especially after 6 months, but to the player who's taken a break over the summer period, which as we can see by the statistics a lot of players do, it's a perfect patch for them, because they come back to the game and everything they were talking about before is fixed, and maybe they think in their head, maybe I was just dreaming it, maybe the game was a lot better than I thought. It's that's basically when you want that type of update. And then the next one was update 1.53 Firestorm. This was done in November 2015, so 2.5 months ago, and this was the first iteration which added British tanks. It also added a ton of other stuff, mainly the Daegor engine. Now, the Daegor engine 4.0 was seen as something that would reinvigorate a lot of people's experiences. So that's where we got the 100k people playing. On Steam it was 35k. So you can see there was a massive spike over basically a month or 2 months or so of people playing the game, and then it went back down again because they were like, oh well, it's still the same game. You know, the Daegor engine is nice and everything. It also means that it's more accessible to more machines and more players, which is something that I think War Thunder really does well at when it comes to any type of game. The fact that I could play it on my old laptop, the fact that I can play it on my new computer at 60 FPS or 120 FPS on maximum shows to me that it is maybe... I think the word I would use is well optimized. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but basically it's run well on any settings on any machine I've ever had. And it has such a wide range of system requirements, it means that I can play with a lot of people I probably wouldn't be able to before. Or wouldn't be able to play with in a lot of other games. But that was hyped up a lot, this new Daegor engine. And to be honest, if we look at it, we can see a massive increase of players, and then it goes down again to the players who were playing before. But there's a slight increase compared to the players playing before, and now we're getting back into that period of March and April and May, where the game should increase again. Because there's going to be another major update. It's going to be in DO. The DO 335 is going to come in. There's also going to be the Falcon, the T-44-100, that bastardization of another damn Russian tank. But you can see that there's a general pattern here. The only thing that I suppose people could point to and say that the game is dying is the fact that there isn't a massive increase all the time of the amount of players playing the game. If we look on Steam, the average has gone from 7,000 to 10,000/11,000. The highest average we've had is in May 2015. Sorry, no it isn't. Is in March 2015, which was 14,000. And then the other one was May 2015, which was 13,000. February 2015, 13,000. Now we're hovering around the 11,000 to 10,000 mark. But the thing is, you can literally see from these numbers when updates were put into the game. Because you can see massive gains from the month before they were put into the game. One of them is startling. From May to June 2015, you go from 13,200 to 10,000. And then guess what? May to June 2014, 10,863 to 8,000. It's as if people go on holiday in the summer. I know it's a crazy thing, but if we compare January 2014, January 2015, and January 2016, January 2016 had more players than both. Same with every other month. This game is increasing in players, and I'm sick of hearing that this game is going down in players, or that it is stagnating. The increase in players may not be a lot for a lot of people, but the fact is you have a constant player base. Now you can speculate as much as you want about how many of them are new players, how many of them are veterans, how many people are leaving the game, and how many people are joining. You could speculate that War Thunder has an issue of grabbing people from that Tier 2 to Tier 3 to Tier 4 area, and basically a lot of people are giving up at Tier 3 and not staying in the game and going to jets and stuff like that. But all you can do is speculate. You have no hard numbers, you have no facts, and you are basically spreading hearsay. That's all it is when it comes down to this. Because if we take the average, year by year, month by month, this game's increased in players. Maybe you could say that compared to other games like Counter-Strike, Dota, League, you know, the big three, or, you know, even Hearthstone, I suppose. Or, you know, World of Tanks. It would be interesting to compare this to World of Tanks, but maybe you could say the growth isn't as big in War Thunder. But it's still growing, and it's still getting bigger. And one thing that people seem to forget a lot about in this game is the fact that it makes an absolute shit ton of money for Gaijin. So I can't see them giving it up anytime soon. But I would like to stop seeing these threads, backed up by absolutely no evidence apart from this day last year compared to this day this year. I'd like to see some hard evidence saying that this game is dying. I think the most you could say is stagnating. Its user base has not gone down unless you compare month to month instead of year to year. Or month to... Basically, instead of looking at general trends, you go from month to month. Because as I said before, I can compare May and June of every year, and they lose, 2,000, 3,000 people because people go on holiday. It's weird how that works, as I said. But I would like to see some evidence. If you're going to say War Thunder is dying, if you're going to try and show me that it's dying, I would like to see some empirical data, as usual. And I'd like to see some breakdowns of how many players are new and how many players are old. Because I sure ain't shit going anywhere. And I'm guessing a lot of pilots who are at that tier 5 stage probably aren't either, or tankers. But anyway, I'm gonna go to bed, because I'm really, really fucking ill. So I'll catch you next time.